And welcome to a lunchtime edition of the Midday Show. You were
What's
revved
usually
up.
a breakfast?
I didn't say this to you before the show. I hadn't even finished eating my lunch yet. I set it aside because you were that excited to do a show. It's Tuesday, but I didn't want to discourage. I was like, he wants to do a show, so we're going to do a show, right? Are you with me?
I'm with you.
So it's a non-show day, lunchtime, and you were so revved up. You were like, we should talk about this. We should talk about that. Like everything. I'm excited to hear what you have to say. The floor is yours. Mark Messina, what are you excited to talk about today?
Stop.
How are you feeling?
I'm good.
You look good. You
I'm
seem
good.
fresh. You seem good.
I'm good. It would be better if Texas would have held on because that would have helped things in my
Yeah.
world. But nothing like coughing up a 13-point second half lead to.
Not coaching looks good on you. You're just fresher and you're just happier and bubblier.
I'll tell you this,
Yeah.
and you can relate to this probably better than most. Well, I don't know. I don't know if we've ever talked about this. The worst part of coaching is sleeping.
Uh-huh.
Because I am a person that when I wake up in the middle of the night and I check my phone and I have trouble falling back to sleep once my mind gets racing. Mm-hmm. And during the season, when something happened, when I wake up and I'm thinking of, how do we get this guy more minutes? And how do we get this guy more minutes? And maybe we should play more zone. Maybe we should do this. Maybe we should do that. Mm-hmm. And that's during the season, my middle of the night is worse. Because I have trouble shutting my brain off. Mm-hmm. Because all these things they're not obvious. It's like one thing where you're like, oh, tomorrow I got to stop at the dry cleaners. I've got to do this. Uh-huh. I've got, all these things coaching wise. It's not I have to do this. It's maybe we should do this. Uh-huh. Or maybe at practice we should do this drill or we should do that drill or we should tweak. So that's, yes. So I think rest just is better during the off season.
Sure.
And it has nothing to do with what time you go to bed. It's just your ability to shut the brain off.
But now you've brought yourself on a new headache. Would you like to say it out loud?
Yeah, well, it's not a headache.
Do you want to say it out loud?
Well, it was in the paper. I'm running for county commissioner on the Democratic.
Say it with your chest. Say it with your chest.
I'm running for county commissioner.
Okay.
Because I don't know if people following. A lot of people don't know what county commissioners do, but it's mostly a big budget committee. Uh-huh. But there's 3 commissioners, and you can only have 2 from the same party.
Yeah.
And right now it's Scott Metzger and Tony Mussar are the Republicans, and Rick Maravito's the Democrat. And Tony and Rick are both not seeking re-election. Scott Metzger is the only one that is currently there that's running again. Okay. So there's going to be a new. Well, assuming in our area, since Lycoming County is so red, I think it's like 70% registered voters are Republicans. Okay. So for something like the last 60 years or 62 years or something like this, there's been 2 Republicans on the commission and 1 Democrat, and it will stay that way. I mean, so there will be a new Republican and a new Democrat.
Okay.
So.
And you're hoping you're one of them.
Well, that is the hope.
Where do you have your mic today? Is your mic up?
It's right here. Yeah. Why can't you hear me?
No, just making sure.
Oh,
I'm clipped.
I'm clipped in.
So
I don't know what I'm allowed to talk about, what I'm not allowed to talk about because.
So slow down. I got questions for you, and these questions will be good questions because, like you said, they're going to be things you're allowed to talk about.
Okay.
So you and I've come on here a lot. We've talked about politics before and kind of what we like, what we dislike. The convincing yourself to actually do it, I think, is a fascinating conversation, and it's something that you just went through. We talked with Jamie Flick about it a little bit, right? That tipping point of talking about it versus actually doing it. What was your tipping point? What was kind of the inflection point of kind of going from just kind of speaking it to all of a sudden oh my God, we're really doing this?
Well, the difference between and Flick is becoming. I just saw him again yesterday. Mm-hmm. Is becoming one of my best friends in politics, even though he's Republican, I'm Democrat. Mm. But in his position, it's always a fight. Real politics is this fight, and it's people screaming across the aisle at each other. F you and I'm right and you're wrong and you're stupid and I'm a genius and all this stuff. And the thing that I like about the commission is it's just a budget committee and glorify. I mean, there's things that they do, obviously, but that's what they do, and it's bipartisan. And it is going to be 3 people sitting in a room. The rule is you can't have all 3 from one party. So like in Philadelphia, there's always 2 Democrats and 1 Republican.
Sure.
Here, there's 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat. But it's like we have to work together. It doesn't do anybody good to go scream at each other. And the more I've been around, you find out people are closer to the middle. There are the extremes over here and the extremes over here, and those people kind of scare some of us. But a lot of us, depending on even though we're on opposite parties,
right?
There's a lot that we agree on, even though there's things that we disagree on. You know, and I talked to someone. I talked to someone last night at a function that they had here who was on the other, who's a Republican. But when we talked about our things, you know, we're both pro-choice and we support women's rights to choose. We're both pro-business and we support, but you know, for whatever reason, they lean this way and I lean this way. But there's a lot of people in the middle that are incredibly similar. It's just kind of like they had to pick a team. And it's, for some reason, sports has become like, you know, Penn State, Ohio State, you know, you hate one or the other. And most of us aren't that extremist. And especially when you're just looking at budget, like the biggest thing the county commissioners have done lately, I think, well, the landfill, there's just a purchase of the landfill, but they're fixing bridges out in the periphery, in the townships. And there's this plan that they just figured out how to pay for, because that's what society's about now, just figuring out how to pay for everything. And you get a bridge that's out in some township that has a small population, maybe a not affluent population, but if the bridge has decayed and is unpassable, then it affects everybody that ever wants to use it. So you get a bridge is not right or left. It's not conservative or liberal. A bridge, we just need it. And if, you know, with a levee project, which is a big deal now here in Williamsport, if there's no levee in it and there's a flood and there's hundreds of millions of dollars of damage, the water doesn't care if you're a Republican or Democrat. It's just going to do damage. So it's so much of the infrastructure stuff and the budget stuff and how much money can you attract and what can you do with it. And, but I like the cooperativeness because, you know, as we are different parties, but I enjoy the conversation. I enjoy and because I'm not left on everything, and you know, and most people aren't extreme. Most people aren't like, yes, I am the party through and through. And so yeah, so that and deep down, you also find people, even when they're extreme, like they have a friend who's on the other side. Like one of the things I said in the primary when people talk to me, I was like, most of my friends can't vote for me in the primary because I'm from Montoursville, and most males from Montoursville are Republicans. So like when I go down through my list, I don't have a whole lot of friends that I grew up with that can vote for me in the primary. So it's a different world. It's a very different position than most political positions where it's just people screaming and the hostility and the anger. And so, because I wouldn't want to be part of that. That doesn't sound. I wouldn't enjoy that.
So what was your tipping point? Was it like you were sitting at home one night and you were like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this?
Well, no, I never thought of it until someone came in after Carrie covered the meeting, and she came back and said, Rick announced he's not running again. Which I surprised all of us. I guess all of us that are around it. And, you know, I just kind of started talking because there has to be someone. And that's the other thing too. It's not like you're going into where you're like, hey, we're running, and you know, like not that I might not lose, but like a Democrat is going to. There has to be a Democrat. So you're not going this uphill battle that like you're trying to change the culture of the world or whatever. You know, it's a job and somebody needs to do it. It's like, you know, you show up for baseball, we're going to have a catcher and somebody needs to catch. So, so the fact that somebody, you know, they need to have a Democrat to do it. And
when we talked to Jamie Flick when he came on, that was what, probably like half a year ago?
It was after he won his
summer?
primary. I think it was in
Okay.
the summer. It was between
Okay.
the primary and the real election. But once he won the primary, he knew he was winning.
We had talked a little bit, like, to me, being on the outside of all of it, but being fascinated by it at the same time. To me, there's like 3 phases, because to me, there's like talking about it. Like, lots of people talk about it, right? They should run, they could run, all this stuff. Then there's running. So you go from talking, and then there's running, and then you go from running to like winning. And so I was fascinated by Jamie about the conflict of, like, you think about you'll do this, you'll do that, and then once you win, that tipping point of like, oh wow, like I'm doing it now, like I'm really doing it. So I'm just always fascinated by the idea of like what pushes people to go from talking about it to actually running, and then that moment of like going from like you're trying and you're trying and you're trying to win to all of a sudden you win and now you have the job. And so I'm always just fascinated by like those cliffs, right? Like those when it actually happens.
Right.
You go from talking about it to actually running, like you're getting the campaign signs, right? Like you're actually like going for it and you're talking to people and trying to figure it out. So I don't know. I'm always fascinated by that dynamic and what kind of pushes people kind of, I don't want to say like over the ledge, because that sounds like it's a negative thing.
Right.
But just what pushes people past the talking stage to like, I'm actually running.
I mean, one of the curious things for me going forward is how people treat me differently now, knowing that I'm a Democrat, because as my daughter said,
I thought you were an ass before, and I think you're an ass now. So it all works out.
Yeah, as my daughter always jokes, she is like, you're an old straight white male. The Republican Party was made for you. Like, what are you doing as a Democrat?
Yeah.
And there's my friends knew, because we always joke, but like I said, most of my friends are Republican. But there's lots of people who just assume, and as we do, if you're an old white male from the suburbs, especially, I've been in real estate, and especially if you are kind of a business in the business world, that everyone just believes that you're a Republican. And so I'm wondering if there are people now who treat me differently, who are militantly right and are just dumbfounded. But I have a guy who I just saw not that long ago when I was getting signatures for my petition, who I'd coached his kid in Little League, and he is very right. And every time we see each other, we smile and we laugh. And he said to me, I'm the only Democrat that he talks to, or something like that. But it is that I hope that none of that changes.
Sure.
But it will be interesting to see how many people, because there are times that you tell people here, because it's such a staunch Republican area, that you say I'm a Democrat and people look at you funny.
Are you surprised that, I will say this, because you and I have known each other, like really known each other now for almost 4 years, like I don't want to say like on an intimate level, but like real in-depth know each other.
Let's be honest. It's been the best 4 years of your life.
It's, I'm still here. So one of the things that is interesting that you just brought up is I would have guessed after about a month or two of talking to you, it became very apparent to me that you were a Democrat. And I don't mean that in any negative way at all. Just when you and I would talk about different issues and different things would came up, and I kind of hear your thought process, I'd be like, oh, like he's a Democrat. Are you surprised that people that have known you for this long are just now finding out that you're a Democrat?
That's a good question, because the people who know me know.
Yeah.
Because I have a good friend who's a big outdoorsman, and I just saw him again the other day. He's like, we're going fishing this year. I'm taking you fishing. And my joke is, as soon as you vote blue, I'll go fishing.
Okay.
And, so we, but like when I talked on the phone to Rick Marabito after he announced he wasn't running again and he wasn't seeking re-election, and I talked to him, we had a long conversation, and he said to me, I'll be honest with you, I didn't know you were a Democrat until right now.
Yeah.
Probably just because. But I've done the same thing. I saw people last night at the function. I saw a guy that we deal with here. And when we were talking about it, and he said, and then he told me he was a Democrat, and I was surprised because he's from the suburbs. And so we do have that stereotype that, all the old white males around here are Republicans. And I've seen people, because you get the list, and I just went up to a guy the other day that I saw. I said, do you know you're on the Democratic list? And he was like, oh, yeah, I know. But then you go tell other people and they're dumbfounded because
Sure.
that's just the assumption that's made. So
The other and I'm sure you're running into this now too. I'm always fascinated at how when you come into a conversation and you know the other person is on the other side of the aisle, you almost start with the opposites instead of the attract, like
I
the
know what you
middle.
mean.
Whereas if you walk into somebody and you don't know that they're on the opposite side of the aisle, you usually start with the things you agree on. And then you trickle down to like the breaking point of like, well, I kind of think this might be the right way to solve this, or this might be the way it should be. And they'll be like, yeah, I think it's there. So it is interesting to me. You and I always talk about the middle. We talk about how much more people have in common with that kind of things. I think you are a little bit of a walking example where we are way closer to the center than what anybody would ever admit to. And your example of everyone who's ever had a conversation with that, I would imagine that the main nuts and bolts of things you have typically agreed with a lot of conservatives. It's once you kind of start to like unpack it, you just have different philosophies or different viewpoints of those things.
Right.
But the moral center of most of this stuff, very rarely do you or I disagree on like the bigger picture or moralness of it. So I don't know. You have a unique existence where you have kind of most of the people that you've gotten to talk to about social, political, financial issues, they have come at you in a place where you got to start in the middle instead of starting from like the fractured outskirts because they knew you were a Democrat. It's a very you get a very different point of view from a Democratic viewpoint that most don't get.
Well, I think yes, and I agree with that. I think one of the other things, just people in general, as people fall into like two categories, whether you're either pessimistic or optimistic, or you're a spender or you're a saver, and all these things. When people have conversations, they're either like here to prove my point and defend my point, or we're here to learn. And like I enjoy listening to what people say. Sometimes I even enjoy listening to what you have to say, because like
sometimes you check out and look at your phone.
That's how you learn. I just got a text. But I remember I used to work with a guy who he said this to me once. We were talking about a real estate deal, and he was older than me. He was more experienced than me. He's a smart guy, and I ended up I was giving him some advice as to how to try to sell this to a client because we were on both sides of the deal. And we're trying to work it out. And then like after I got into it and I kind of stepped back and I was like, I mean, I'm not really trying to tell you how to do your job because you do your job very well. And I'll never forget, he looked at me, he said, listen, he said, I already know everything I know. The only way I get smarter is if someone else tells me something that they know that I don't already know.
Sure.
So he's like, if you ever have any advice for me, give it to me. And then I might disagree with it or not agree with it. But that I'll never forget that I already know everything I know. The only way I get smarter is to learn what you know that I don't know.
Right.
And so that's one of the things, like in these conversations, that I enjoy having the conversations with people who are on the other side because it's not personal to me. Right. And I can have a conversation with someone who's pro-life and we can discuss the people can be very, very defensive when you disagree. And the more defensive people get, then the less people are willing to disagree with them because they know it's going to cause a fight. So that's one of the great challenges of life, no matter what walk of
life. Nothing better to say. So do you have a slogan? Are you ready to roll?
I mean, what do you have slogan for? Like, I don't know.
Ooh, I got one for you. Are you ready for it?
Yeah, I'm ready.
I think you should go with check mark. Get it? Check mark. Yeah. You didn't like it.
I hear noise coming from somewhere.
There, it's gone.
Oh, okay.
You should do check mark. Should be the slogan.
I get it. Yeah. I get it. It's kind of clever.
You're like you don't know. You want to make fun of it,
at
but
first,
it's also not
really, this is how I thought it was like some form of checkmate and then I was like, I thought you were going with that clever, but now with check mark.
Yeah.
With that little pun, it was nice.
Yeah,
very, very nice.
Have it right on the.
Do slogans work? Like for businesses, they work.
I asked Trump if slogans work.
Yes, that's true. Read my lips. No new taxes won an election.
Yeah.
I think Trump had two that were. I think "Make America Great Again." I thought was certainly sold, and I thought "Drain the Swamp."
Drain the Swamp.
I thought "Drain the Swamp" was brilliant. Whoever came up with that, I don't know if that was planned, or if he just rattled that off the top of his head, but that was brilliant.
I think a lot of times the slogan that appeals to your voters. Like sometimes I think people try to get too cute with their, like I did the check mark thing with your name. I think if you can come up with a slogan that actually works for your base more than it does for you, those are the ones that work.
Agreed.
Those are the ones because they don't like Draining the Swamp isn't like clever or catchy or, you know what I'm saying? Like it's not something you put on a t-shirt. Like but it's to the point and it's exactly what his base wanted.
Absolutely.
And I think that part of it is the genius too of the swamp. Like just
yes,
that.
Yes, he didn't say drain the pool.
No.
He didn't say drain the tub.
Yes.
That there's a murkiness and
correct.
I mean, you think of swamp, and there is nothing pleasant about a swamp.
Yes.
Unless you're an alligator.
So
and then it's really and then it's home.
Good luck.
Thank you. And you can't even vote for
him. I can't vote.
Not
for
in the
you.
primary.
Not in the primary. I don't think you need me to vote for you in the primary.
Well, you good because you can't. But your girlfriend can. That's why I like her more than you anyway.
I think she will vote for you too. Heather says check mark is good, but people get confused. People make check marks and then have to redo their ballots because they actually have to fill in the ovals. That might have been the Republican coming out of me there, trying to.
There you go. You were trying to pretend you're helping, and then but like, ooh, just a little check mark. Very clever. Very clever.
Well, I'm happy we did this. I mean, if there's something we can talk about more if you want. I have lunch sitting here. I'm glad we got on. We didn't get on.
No, I have other things we can talk about. But it's
Let's do it. Hit me. What do you got? We just got to move quicker than what we usually do.
You didn't see this story? First graders in Wisconsin. Hold on, did I put it away? First graders in Wisconsin. They were going to sing a song called Dreamland. Please tell me it's right here. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, not Dreamland. Rainbow Land. It's a Dolly Parton, Miley Cyrus song.
Okay.
And like, first of all, right now, Dolly Parton's still on top of the world. She was just in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Okay.
But when you list the people in modern society who are essentially liked by everyone,
okay,
Dolly Parton has to be high on the list.
She has a high approval rating.
Very high.
Okay.
So this Rainbow Land song is basically, and if you can go Google it and play it and whatever. It's upbeat, it's catchy, it's a good. It would have been a fun song for first graders to sing, and first graders like rainbows because they can relate. They have crayons every day. So it was basically like the different colors of the rainbow and all the word hue is in there, and and because we're all different, but that's what makes us beautiful and it works together and blah blah blah. And when you hear it, it's all about like different people coming together and whatever.
Yes.
This school in Wisconsin said they couldn't sing it because it might be too controversial.
Okay.
So they nixed it.
Yes.
And it's
a little bit like the Addams Family production getting.
Addams Family production got nicked. But where was that?
That was in PA.
That was
like in Harrisburg.
Oh, it was down by Lebanon-ish, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact school, but yes. The public school system has trying to think how to say this, because I don't think it's any one institution's fault. I think it's not parents' fault, because parents want what's best for their kids. The voices that surround the decision-making at public school institutions now, it's almost like you don't know what matters, what actually has weight to it, who is actually making the choices and who's making the decisions. You and I've said it, school boards matter now more than ever before. Your school board now, I mean, 20, 30 years ago, I don't know. I'm not saying school boards didn't matter 20, 30 years ago, but these issues are going to come up to your school board now than ever before. And so I don't know. I mean, the only thing I can say to people is, like, if you disagree with something, your school board vote is the most important thing you're voting on locally. It is.
You don't think county commissioner vote's the most important?
I can't even vote for you right
now. This is the part I look at, because they talk about they're all. There's times that they're like, this is stuff that should be handled at home. This is stuff that should be handled at home. Well, in a perfect world, yes. But what happens when at home, the home is full of racists, and the home is full of bigots, and the home is full of, homophobes? And, like, is it okay that, little Sally or little Johnny, we're not going to talk about any of this stuff at school. Right. You go home, and whatever values your parents have, they get to, we're not going to expose you to anything else. So I understand with religion. Absolutely. In a public school, religion should not be for, whatever. I understand with political parties. Kids should not feel like they are forced into one by a teacher or an administrator, or coach, or anybody like that. But I don't understand how they can't, that this is bad to sit there and say, yeah, there's kids of all different, colors and shapes and sizes and religious creeds, and we should all be able to get along. And the parent that's like, hell no, that's not what I believe. So I don't understand where that comes from, because who can really stand up and say it's bad to say that we should all get along?
You don't think that this was happening, like, in the 2000s, 90s, 80s? Like, you don't think this stuff was going on?
No, I think no. The reason with this song is because the word rainbow is in it.
No, I
think
understand
that was if it didn't have the word rainbow in the title, I'll bet it would have slipped.
No,
through.
I get that. It's how deep do you want me to get?
How deep do you want to go?
I think in American schools, there's most people's problem. I got to keep backtracking because I want to make sure I say it from the root and grow out. Within the LGBTQ community, like the support that surrounds them, okay? There are a lot of minority groups, social groups. There are people that are not a part of the LGBTQ community who look at them, and their voice is so much louder, and they have covered so much more ground than other minorities and other social groups have, right?
Okay.
And so a song like this comes up, and it's Rainbow Land and rainbows and all of those things. And I think there's this idea of jealousy is the wrong word, but there's this idea of, like, it's a commotion now because of social media, because of the 24-hour news cycle and all these things. I'm just bringing up the fact that, like, we had this in the 2000s. Like, when I was in school in the 2000s, like, we had music that was debatable of whether or not you should be allowed to sing at school. Like, in the 90s, 80s, and 70s. And, like, I mean, so I'm not saying it's not an issue. I'm not saying it's not, like I said, your school board matters now more than ever. If you want to be able to sing Rainbow Land in school, you need to vote in a school board that's going to allow you to do it, because that's the world we live in now. I'm just saying, though, like, I do feel like we've done this through all aspects. Like, that is not the first song and the only song that has been discriminated against based off of either who's singing it or what the message is within the song.
I guess, but, like,
so?
It's hard to fight against this message, isn't it?
What is the message?
That we all
I've never listened to
that we all should get along. Because
have you listened to the song?
I did.
Okay, I have not listened to it. So give us the
when
10-second
when you
rundown.
listen to it, you need to have the lyrics going because it's fast and you don't kind of.
But what is like the 10-second summary?
But that's it. Like, society is like a rainbow. A rainbow's beautiful, but a rainbow wouldn't be beautiful if it was just one color. Correct. The different colors are what makes the rainbow beautiful, and that's what makes our life beautiful. We should, because we're all different colors, but it doesn't mean that your color is better than
Right.
my color.
But do you feel like this is different than what has already been happening? Because I guess that's my argument, is like, this story to me is not new. Like, to me, this is a story.
I mean,
that
I get what you're saying.
Okay.
I just think when you talk about school boards and leadership of all, and we've talked about, Ricky Gervais and the line about offensiveness, and we kind of say it tongue in cheek, just about, the line that I never knew until you told me, but Ricky Gervais says, I think it's funny, you think it's offensive. That's why I'm happier than you.
Sure.
That I think there's many spaces in life where there are people that say, well, someone might be offended by this. Mm-hmm. Someone might be, because that's what it said. I don't think they said it was officially controversial. They said it might be. Mm-hmm. So they wanted to nip it in the butt. But that's when, like, the leadership should stand up and say, well, but it shouldn't be.
Do you know who made the choice? Did the administration make the choice?
It had to be. I guess at the end of the day, it's a superintendent. I guess. Maybe it was a school board. I don't know. But, like, I'll give you an example of, because there are lots of times that people are offended until they understand. Mm-hmm. You know the song Mrs. Robinson by Simon and Garfunkel?
I've heard Mrs. Robinson.
And there's a, cuckoo cuckoo, Mrs. Robinson, cuckoo cuckoo. Mm-hmm. And there's a line in it where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio? Our nation turns its lonely eyes to you. Mm-hmm. And then the Mrs. Robinson, Jolton Joe has left and gone away. Well, supposedly, the first time Joe DiMaggio heard this song, he was furious. Okay. And he's like, I haven't gone anywhere. I'm here. I didn't go anywhere. And then they explained it to him. They're like, no, it's a compliment. It's saying, like, our nation needs heroes, and we don't have heroes anymore like we did back when you were a hero. Where is the next Joe DiMaggio? And then he was like, oh, okay. But his immediate response is, I'm offended.
Yes.
And
so how are we tying that?
Because there's a point where somebody had to stand. Somebody had this idea at school that, like, oh, maybe we shouldn't sing Rainbow Land. And then somebody is it called Rainbow Land? I keep forgetting the title. Rainbow Land. And then somebody of power should have stepped up and said, no, it's okay. Mm-hmm. Like, and just like to spin it again, as you mentioned, somewhere in Pennsylvania, I think it was Lebanon High School or somewhere down there, they won't do the Addams Family. The musical, because they think it's too dark and whatever. Like, somewhere you have to step back and say, well, how many other schools do the Addams Family? People do the Addams Family all over the place. They did the Addams Family at CTL a couple of years ago, and it's awesome. Mm-hmm. It was unbelievably good. Like, I was shocked at how good it was. And, for those of us, I grew up watching the Addams Family, and it was, as you said, it's creepy and kooky and mysterious and spooky. And,
it is.
But, like, and at the same point, at Montoursville, they just did Mamma Mia. Mm-hmm. The whole premise of Mamma Mia is that the lady had hooked up, with 3 different guys in a 6-week span and didn't know who the father of her daughter was.
Sure.
And there's a line in the High School Musical where the girl says to her mom, like, I don't care if you slept with 100 men. Sure. And we can do that, but we can't do the Addams Family?
No, listen. I agree with like 75% of what you're saying. I think schools, as I said before, your school boards matter more than ever. I think schools now have a real trouble with, like, the access for this stuff getting into the school, regardless of whether you think the song is appropriate or not, right? For all I know, Rainbow Land is a great song. I've never listened to it. But my point being,
not as good as 98 Braves.
My point being, it is never as good as 98 Braves. My point being is, a lot of this stuff, even when I was in school, which was not that long ago, it just didn't access itself into the building. Like, we didn't have phones that played music and at any song at any point that we wanted. Like, you had to drag your Discman in, and you, like, it was.
No, I get it.
So there is access to some of this stuff in schools, and it's going to come up more and more often. The small conservative side of me, because like I said, 75% of what you're saying, I agree. I could care less if they play Rainbow Land at school. I really could.
Right.
The small conservative of me thinks, was it necessary to the lesson? Like, is it a necessity to have the song within the lesson that is being taught? Now, what grade was this in?
I think it was in a show. I think it was in a chorus. That would have been my guess. Okay. Why would you sing in school? First grade. So
here's, like, always, like, devil's advocate, seeing the other side of things. If a conservative wanted to come up to me and say, like, Jeff, like, there's no necessity for having this song. It's only going to stir issues. I understand where they're coming from. Like, even if I don't agree with the, like, that it can't be in the school, I may not agree with that. I do understand the idea of, like, it's going to cause problems, is a necessity to the show. Can they do something without it in the show? Like, those aspects, I think that is why I've always found myself kind of seeing both sides of it.
Well, but there's, first of all, my statement, it's only going to cause problems. You don't know if it's going to cause problems. That's speculative. Second of all, there are aspects in time where it should cause problems, because once upon a time there was a point in American history, not even that long ago, where you couldn't play a black guy at quarterback. And so I'm sure there were high school football coaches all over the country who were like, I'm going to play this black kid at quarterback.
No,
and someone else said, well, I don't think we should do that because it's going to cause problems. Well, then there's an aspect of, well, then maybe we should cause the problem.
You're talking, I just want to make sure that we're on the same page, that we're not comparing the limiting of a high school athlete based off of the color of their skin to whether or not you play a song at a school play.
But my point is,
I just want to make sure that we're not comparing.
Just because it's going to ruffle some feathers of people around it doesn't mean it shouldn't happen.
No, and I think that's my point, is like, it's not about whether or not it should happen. I think what I'm saying is, I understand there are things that you certainly right. You're going to ruffle. In order for the best athlete to play quarterback, regardless of their skin or their ethnicity, that was a feather worth ruffling. What I'm saying to you is, without listening to the song, I don't really know if this is a feather worth like, I'm not really sure if this is like the hill to die on. Because in a public school, like, I think that's the biggest thing for conservatives right now, is not like what's allowed in. It's about what are the things that are supposed to be concrete. And if it's not concrete and you're like forcing it onto me, then I'm kind of wary. Like, I don't know. And that doesn't mean, and I'm correct. And again, it doesn't mean that I'm right or that conservatives are right. The point that I'm saying to you is, like, that is where it's coming from. Like, that is, it's the idea of, like, it's supposed to be this, this, and this. And then all of a sudden, like, people are up in arms because of a song. And I think that's where people, and here's the part, even though I don't agree with it, like, play the song, I don't care. I understand where they're coming from.
Well, but here, the hill to die on, like, who's died on this hill? It's not like, I don't think society's looking at these and they, yay for those people because they took out the Dolly Parton song from a first grade chorus concert. They are defending the, like, the school district looks like idiots, just like the school district that took out the Addams Family. They look like idiots.
I think to a section of America, they look like idiots.
You don't think to most of America they look like idiots? I think
to the middle and to the side that got what they wanted, it looks correct. I think to a third of America, like, they're probably looking around like a third of America probably looks at the Addams Family, and like the article I read said, like, there are smoking elements into it, right?
There are smoking in Greece.
There are smoking elements to it. There are misbehavioral elements to it, like disobeying your parents, things like that. So the point that I'm making is,
God forbid we do a play about that.
So the point that I'm making is,
did you see Footloose?
This is the other part of it too. This is where, like, the left side, and Bill Maher talks about this all the time, the belittling of anybody who may not understand what you and I understand. That's where America gets into trouble, because a third of the people, when they made the decision not to have the Addams Family in the school or not to allow Wisconsin to play the Rainbow Land song.
I don't think I think it's 3%. Listen, my mom.
There's no way.
My mom. Now, my mom loves ABBA because, you know, she grew up. My mom is 79 years old. They were basic. I mean, when you think of the premise of Mamma Mia, the mom slept with so many guys she didn't know who the father was. Like, but we just, and people walked away talking about how wonderful the show was.
It's 41 minutes. You've talked for 33 minutes. Time out. What I'm saying to you is, it's not about that you think you're right. Like, you know you're right. Is that a fair way of saying it right now? Like, you really believe that you are on the right side of this argument?
I think that, yes.
Okay, and so what I'm saying to you is, it goes back to what I brought up earlier in this conversation. There are times where people that are really deep on the right or really deep in the left, they like to belittle anybody who's on the other side or in the middle who doesn't see what they see. And what I'm saying to you is, I'm sitting here, I'm giving you reasons why I understand why there are people in Wisconsin, why there are people in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, who believe they're right. Like I
but
get
it's not 33%.
You don't think it's 33%?
No.
Then how do you explain every election in America that like all of them?
Well, because they only have one choice. They only have one choice or the other. But it doesn't mean like you go to a sporting event. There are parents that sit in the crowd think the only people that should play are the seniors. I don't care how good they are. So now it's not 50% of the people. It's not all the Republicans or all the Democrats, but there's that percentage. But it doesn't mean that those percentages right.
Here's what I'm saying to you.
Society
if it was
crazy.
3% of society, and I know you just threw out a number, so I'm not going to hold it against you. If it was 3% of society, these stories would be way less than what they are. I mean, every day you can find a story in almost every state across America. Oh, yeah. You can find a story like this in almost every state of America about a certain song, a certain book, a certain play, a certain anything. And so to think that it's only 3% is that math doesn't add up.
Okay. How many high school musicals have been banned? I think they banned one at Southside a couple of years ago.
Are you asking me how many musicals have been banned across America?
Like the Dolly Parton song made national news because it was Dolly Parton.
Okay.
And it's from Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
The one outside of Harrisburg, why do we know about it? Because it was a news story. Why is it a news story? Because it never happened. Well, no one bans the Addams Family.
There's plays, books, and songs. There's all sorts of media that gets rejected almost daily, if not weekly, across America within school districts.
But not one that is universally done everywhere else, like the Addams Family.
I understand, but what I'm saying to you is just because the Addams Family is popular, or just because Dolly Parton is popular, doesn't mean that there aren't other media. What's the word I'm looking for? There aren't other pieces of media that have similar morality, like similar levels of like right or wrong that are still rejected. Just because Dolly Parton,
and I get it.
Okay, so yes, it's a news story, but it's not a news story because what happened. It's a news story because it's the Addams Family or Dolly Parton. It's still happening all across America.
Let me ask you this. Do you think Grease gets banned in high schools?
Grease? I bet you there are high schools across America that have banned Grease.
Yes. Okay. Do you think they're ridiculous?
Do I think those schools are ridiculous for banning Grease?
Yes.
I disagree. I understand.
So the answer is yes. You think they're ridiculous?
No. I disagree. I think there's 33% of it that if they wanted to come out and say, here are the reasons why, I'd be like, oh, that's their viewpoint. Like, I see why they're saying.
Well, and I see why, like, the story behind, because I've had people tell me the story behind Grease isn't wonderful because it's telling the sweet, wholesome high school girl that you don't want to be sweet and wholesome to win the guy over. And I get that. But the music's great. It's fun. It's it's nostalgic. It's all this stuff. Like, to think that Grease has been a problem with American history and that your kid is going to be protected. Your kid can see whatever they want on their iPhone. Like, who knows what your kid has seen on their iPhone? And you're worried about them doing Grease? You're worried about them doing the Addams Family? Like, of all the issues in the world, you're worried about that they're singing a Dolly Parton, Miley Cyrus. They're not singing "Love Yourself." So if they were singing "Love Yourself" by him, I get that.
Before I lose the train of thought of the thing you said, there is
I'm getting into it.
I'm sure you are. When you say that though, don't you understand that you can give the exact opposite perspective? So when you sit here and you belittle those 33% by saying this,
it's not 33.
Okay, whatever the number is, it's more than 3. When you belittle the between 3 and 33% of people who disagree with you by saying, don't you have something better to worry about? They can flip the same thing around and say, why are you so worried about it getting into the school? Don't you have better things? Don't you have better things to focus on?
Well, with the Addams Family or Mamma Mia. Hold on.
So
I'm responding. You asked me a question.
I understand. So I just want to wrap it all together. So my biggest thing right now is that, like, anybody who's sitting here claiming that they just this is right and this is wrong, I would just say be careful. Like, have your opinion, listen to the other side, but before you belittle the other side, understand though that they can say the same thing to you. Why are you so concerned or worried about getting in if it's just a song?
Because the song is about inclusion and accepting people who are different than you. And in society, that should be in America, in the melting pot where what we are is what we are.
Yes.
It should be be the mantra of the world. If you're talking about Mamma Mia or the musicals, that's different.
You can pick another. Most schools get that throughout their curriculum?
Do I think most schools get inclusion?
Do you think most schools get, like, if I was a student at blank public school in blank America, do you think that most of them get those lessons throughout school? Do you think a Dolly Parton, Miley Cyrus song is the critical piece of education for understanding inclusion and understanding the melting pot of America?
Well,
and by the way, I'm devil's advocate.
I get that. I do get that. Yeah, I understand. I mean, is it a vital? If you're going to teach inclusion, you have to use elements that say we should be inclusive.
Correct. Do you think most schools have that without, like, because up until this point, I
don't know.
Up until this point, we didn't have Rainbow Land to teach.
Well, I get it, but if you're allowed to teach inclusion in a classroom and you're allowed to tell a story about inclusion, then why aren't you allowed to sing a song about inclusion? You're either allowing inclusion or you're not. You can't say we can do it in social studies, we can't do it in music. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, no, but I guess this is what I'm saying to you is, like, it seems very important that, like, and obviously you've gone down this rabbit hole, so it's not just you. But right now, to you, it seems very important that Rainbow Land is allowed in a school. Like,
no,
to you,
it seems ridiculous that it's not.
Okay, exactly. So what I'm saying, though, is when you flip it around the other way, like, does it sound just as silly? And all I'm saying is, like, for a lot of these people, when they flip it around, like, the fact that Rainbow Land must be allowed in the school.
No. Like,
you don't think so?
It's not. They're not saying we had to sing it. They're saying the music teacher, whoever, chose these songs, and this is what they chose. Mm-hmm. Like, all these people wouldn't be up in arms if they weren't protesting outside. Like, we must sing. You must choose this for the show. And she said, okay. She chose the music for the show,
right? And
then someone said, it might be controversial, so they pulled it out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, if it wasn't in the show, I wouldn't care. Like, every first grade chorus concert for the rest of time doesn't need to sing Rainbow Land.
Is it first grade?
It's first grade.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't even care. But in the show, to turn around and say, it can't be there. I don't care that they were going to do the Addams Family. They don't know. But they chose the Addams Family. Cool. The fact that they're not allowed to do the Addams Family, now they're ridiculous.
Uh-huh.
And that's the aspect of it, because the message behind it is,
I get that, but
we should all get along.
Yes, but you don't see any of the other side.
Like, we shouldn't all get along?
No, that's not the other. That's the exact. See, this is what happens.
Then what is the other side?
This is what happens, because people like you that are willing to listen, and people like you that are willing to talk about it, and that, like, educated is an awful word to use in this scenario, but people that are, like, educated and there is, like, a belittling of anybody who may not understand what you and I are discussing.
What is the possible intelligent argument to this song is about inclusion? What is the intelligent argument on the other side?
And so devil's advocate, because again, I think they should be allowed. Because anybody tuning in right now is going to be like, oh my God,
Jeff's a horrible dude.
Okay. The devil's advocate that I'm making to you, though, is, like, I don't know if anyone could make the argument that it has to be included.
But that's not the point. The point is,
it's not the point to you or I. That's exactly what I'm trying to say to you. To you and I, that is not the point, because we can see past that. What I'm saying to you, though, is there are other people that is not the point that they are making. There are other people, like, whether it was the people trying to keep the Addams Family out or different songs, whatever book it is across America, there are other people that are sitting here and saying public education is supposed to do X, Y, and Z. Anything outside of that, I don't need it in there. You're just flooding and watering down the basics that are supposed to be taught within public education. Well, it doesn't mean I agree with it. I'm just telling you what the other 33, you say 3, what the other 33% of Americans are saying.
But that's where the administration has to stand up and say you're wrong. Can they not sing "Imagine" by John Lennon?
I understand,
because John Lennon that's what Imagine's about. And John Lennon used drugs. So are they not allowed to use it?
And the administration of school board, right, in this scenario, does not agree with you. It looks as if it is defending or agreeing with the public on the outside saying it shouldn't. So, like, that's
the aspect. The aspect you're saying that the public should be able to say that it shouldn't. I want to know why it shouldn't. What is wrong with it? We'll take it. We'll take Rainbow Land out. We'll put in Imagine. You know Imagine.
Yes.
What's wrong with it? What's wrong with the message? Not whether, well, he's British. We shouldn't. I mean, you can come up with all kinds of reasons. Like, we can't do a Prince song because Prince was a drug addict. We can't do a Michael Jackson song because Michael Jackson was a legend.
So what most would, and by most, I mean that faction of people, what most in that faction would say, half are hiding behind it, but the other half believe it. But what they're all saying is it necessary to public education?
But that's not the point. That's not
no,
the point.
It's not.
The point is they've chosen this song because any song, then you wouldn't have, you could argue about any song.
Mark, it's not the point to you and I.
No. That's not the point of the argument. So any song, then you could object to any song under that argument.
And people do all across America.
That's not true. Then they wouldn't have core shows.
People, no, because there are songs that are like approved across the board. Like no one's going to argue jingle. Well, that's probably not true.
They could. Sure they could.
So there you go. So that's only helping my point.
But here's the thing. There's the argument's on one of two sides. The argument's either on content or the argument is it necessary to public education. And there's no song that's necessary to public education. Correct. Unless you're of the people who say that the arts and save the music are vital to public education. But there are people that just out there and say reading, writing, and arithmetic, and we don't need, so should we kowtow to them? Or do the people who are in charge of this, do they have to stand up and say, no, we need art in school?
But when you say the people that are in charge of it, like that is the point of local and state government. And I think that's why in some places this would never fly. In California, they would sing Rainbow Land every day. You see what I'm saying? In Wisconsin, in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the local administrations, the school boards, the local government, the state government, now that's shifting across the country, right? Like across the country, people are trying to do the right things in local and state government and across school boards across the country. But there's also pockets in the country who vehemently disagree with you and kind of disagree with me.
But okay, so they vehemently disagree with me about inclusion.
No. No, they vehemently disagree with you on whether or not the song or the media or the content should be allowed into the school. Now, half of the people...
Hold on. Because of the content.
Half of the
what
people,
you just said.
Half of the people disagree with you on inclusion. Half of the people simply don't like what's happening to public school across the country.
So they disagree with every song.
What's that?
So you're saying those people then disagree with every song?
You don't think that there's people across America that...
No, but that was my question.
I'm going to answer your question. You don't think there's people across America that don't look at the public school system, and when they come home, they want them to know writing, they want them to know reading, they want them to know math, and they want them to know science, right? You don't think that there's people that when they come home, they don't think you don't think there's people that's what they want when people when their kids come home that day, they don't want to hear about any other influence or anything else. Like you said, they will handle that. Now, in some households, that in your opinion, that's fine. Other households that vehemently disagree with your moralities or disagree with what's right or wrong, you would be like, I disagree with that. So it's all relative. It's all, this story would never happen in California. It would never happen in New York State. It's only happening in a Wisconsin pocketed area, Harrisburg, a Pennsylvania pocketed area. Because that's the people that are around that area have clearly influenced the administration and the school board.
This is the point of the argument that you're tiptoeing around. It's either about content or it's not. Cut and dried. Because they're going to sing another song. So if the people are against, this shouldn't, I don't know if this is a necessary part of the curriculum, then they don't want any of the music. But if they're yeah, they can sing songs, just don't sing controversial songs. Now it's content.
Okay.
And that is cut and dried. So this song has made national news.
I agree
not
with you.
because of content. So hold on.
I agree
so then
with
the
you.
content is about inclusion and exclusion. And the people who don't want inclusion, aren't they called racist?
So now back up 3 sentences. You're basically saying that there is not you're saying. What you're implying is that controversial music is very easy to see and to point out. And what I'm saying to you is that's a dangerous slope to play with America, because a big faction of America would disagree on what is controversial and what is not. So you keep, trying to make
but you understand that with that, it still comes back to content. And these people have decided that the content of saying everybody's cool no matter what color they are that there are people out in Wisconsin who've lost their mind because they believe the opposite. Everybody's not cool, regardless of what. I only want people that are like me, and I don't want my kids singing that every color of the rainbow is good, because it's in my household, it's not good. That's the only alternative.
I would say two things as the devil's advocate. I would say the first one is yes, and it's.
I like that you number.
I would say yes, that it's more than yes, and it's more than 3%.
Okay.
The second thing would be, it's just I always fall into these rabbit holes because I'll agree with a Democrat, like I will agree with a socially progressive person on this issue, but they don't realize how like they just throw away the other perspective of it. Like, I'm sure Rainbow Land is a fine song. I have nothing on.
I've listened to it.
If I have a kid, they can sing Rainbow Land all they want. I do not care. I don't care. You're talking to a kid who had Eminem in his earphones when he was like 12.
An hour ago.
Yes, I do not care if they listen to Rainbow Land. I just don't think like I would throw away. I'm not making the assumption that less than a third of America is just going to hear the fact that Rainbow Land was played in school and they're just going to be like, oh, okay. Like that's not America. Like that's just not America we live in. If our elections have shown anything over the last like 8 years,
no, I disagree.
It's that really
there's
think
extremes.
Better than that.
No, because that's like saying our elections are 50-50. The pro-life, pro-choice vote is not 50-50. Mm-hmm. It's not even close. Like I just saw a thing about,
but it's not 97-3.
No, but it's not reflective of. There are lots of Republicans who are pro-choice. There are a lot more Republicans that are pro-choice than there are Democrats who are pro-life, because it's skewed even in the swing states. They've shown these numbers.
And what I'm telling you is there's a lot more parents that would have questions about it than what you want to admit to. Like there's a lot more parents who would influence a school board or an administration to keep something like that out of the school. Now, what you want to apply that to, or what you want to think of those people, is a completely different conversation, which I think you've been kind of trying to like lean into. I'm sitting here telling you, I'm not surprised it happened in Wisconsin. I'm not surprised it happened in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And I'm not saying I agree with them. What I'm saying is I understand their point of view and why it's happening. Doesn't mean I agree with it, and it doesn't even mean I like it. What I'm saying to you, though, is I see why it is happening. So when you say like school boards and administrations got to stand up for what they believe in, guess what, Mark? A lot of them are. Like a lot across pockets of America, the administrations of school boards are filled with people that are making this choice because they want to make this choice.
But to me, it's
belittle those pockets of America and just be like, they've got this completely wrong. I don't know. Like I wouldn't belittle them. I wouldn't just put them down.
But at the end of
over a song,
there's an aspect of like what they believe, but there also has to be justification what they believe, because again, once upon a time they believed black people couldn't play quarterback.
Okay, so let me put it to you this way, and hopefully this will tie together and wrap it up. What I'm saying to you is I agree with you that they should have the song in the school. It should have been allowed in the play. Right. If I was a school board member, if I was an administrator, I would have allowed the song to be played. Right. Do you agree with that?
I get that.
Okay. I think it's also fair to say that no one's outside the school picketing, not allowing any member or other ethnicity into the school to gain a public education. So like this whole like far in, I just don't think it's that far off. They should have let the song in the school. No one's stopping any minority or LGBTQ member from being a part of this school in Wisconsin. So it's one of those balances of like, yeah, it's probably wrong, but I'm also not going to sit here and act as if this song is the hill to die on. Like as if like there hasn't been like moves made progressively.
The hill to die on for which side?
What do you mean?
The conservatives or the liberals?
No, the members of the school. Like if you're an administrator or a school board member, like I don't know if this is the fight. Like I don't know if Rainbow, like
see,
the
I'm
song
on the other
Rainbow
side.
Land is the fight.
I'm on the other side. If you're the people, like if you're going to stand up and say this is what's wrong with our school, this is the thing I'm going to the school board to fight about. Mm-hmm. Are you fighting over a Dolly Parton song, Rainbow Land, in a first grade chorus concert? Like. From the people who are like the country's going to hell in a handbasket, and we're going to save it because we're getting the Dolly Parton song on. Like, is that the hill for them to die on?
It's a good question. Do you think so? But you do think it's the hill for the school board and the?
I think the school board had to stand up and say,
and the administration
it's a song. Listen to the message. It's fine.
And you would have regardless of the public's opinion, you would have went with it.
Yes.
Okay, so you agree then?
Just as all these high schools, when another high school wants to do Mamma Mia, yeah. I think they should be allowed to do it.
So you agree then that in your opinion, that is the hill to die on. As a school board member and as an administrator, Rainbow Land was the hill to die on. Like that was the one to stand and be like, I think we are letting this song into the school.
I think from the administration side, I don't think there's one hill. I think they get all kinds of complaints, and I think they have to weed. Okay. I think there are 100 hills, and I think there's some hills you defend and some hills you tell people to go away.
Huge sidestep, yes or no?
But yes, they would absolutely. I would have told them you're overreacting. We're playing the song.
I agree. I think I would have done the same thing. It's very clear though that there are school boards and administrations across America that is not Rainbow Land would not have been the hill they died on. They wouldn't have.
There's one.
What?
There's one administration. That's why it's national news. If this was happening everywhere, then I wouldn't know it's a first grade class in Wisconsin because it wouldn't have made national news.
You and I disagree on that too, though. It's only national news because it's a Dolly Parton song. It's Dolly Parton and Miley Cyrus.
But it's Dolly Parton's song in every state.
There's hundreds of, like I said, there's hundreds of pieces of media that are getting denied across America weekly. Like this is only getting to the front of it because it's Dolly Parton and Miley Cyrus.
Correct. I'm sure they're denying Slayer,
which is why it's
more than
it's more than 3%.
And it's Dolly Parton. This Dolly Parton song, I would bet you, has been denied in one public school, and that's why we know it. The Addams Family has been denied in one school district in Pennsylvania, and that's why we know it. And somewhere in it, these people have to say
because they're the largest ones. You don't know about all the other plays that have been denied across our state and across America. Like
and that's fair.
They're not,
that is fair.
Yes. And that's what I'm saying about this song. I'm telling you, all across America, tons of media denied in public schools all the time but it's not like it wasn't written by Dolly Parton. So it's not, it's some random song on YouTube.
No, I get that. Okay. No, I get that. But that's like saying we're going to ban Tom Sawyer. And we're the only school district that's going to ban Tom Sawyer, even though everyone else has read it for 100 years and it's an American classic and Mark Twain's one of the great satirists of all time and all his other stuff. But because we're right and everybody else is wrong. And you can't take the side of, it's just wrong for us and my kids in our little neighborhood, even though it's been good for everybody else for 150 years. That's the point.
But isn't that again, and it doesn't mean I agree with that local like that local community.
Right.
But isn't that the point of local government and like school boards and local administration? Like, isn't that the whole aspect?
It's the scariness of local government and local school boards.
Yes, but that is like the system works both ways, right?
Correct. It works well and it works badly, and it's working badly.
Like when we talked about Roe v. Wade, we talked about how like Roe v. Wade climbed its way up through to the federal level. And now we're seeing the inverse. And that was a positive aspect to most people. To most people, Roe v. Wade climbing its way up to the federal level was positive.
Right.
Now we are seeing the opposite effect, and it's twiddling its way back through, and people view that as negative. So it just all depends on, are you on the side that you think is right, or are you on the side that you think is wrong? Because there's a lot of aspects in which you're waiting. Like there are a lot of media, there's a lot of books and movies and different things that they're waiting for the first school to say, yes, you should be allowed in here. And in that aspect, you want to be the only school to go like everybody else is wrong. Like we should have this in here. So it all depends on how you look at it.
Correct.
If it's working for you, it's great. If it's working against you, it's bad.
I agree with that on it. But it goes beyond that. There still has to be you can't just say, well, I don't like it. And therefore you have to give a reason. And the reason of like, why can't they sing the song? Well, if Rainbow Land, if they said, F you every chorus. Okay, we can't sing that in first grade.
And
there's a reason for that. Well, depending on what the beat behind it was. But there has to be a reason other than it just makes me uncomfortable. Or someone else might be uncomfortable. Or that's not fair.
Isn't that it's a weird question then about democracy, right? Because the weird thing about your vote is you don't need a correct reason for your vote to count. That's the weird part.
In elections, absolutely.
Okay. And so if an administration, or like if a school board's making this, school boards are elected. And so it's this weird balance of like, you're asking for a reason. And I agree with you. Transparency should really matter today more than any other time.
Right.
But typically, like, democracy is not great at transparency. It never has been. It's a false sense of transparency. We think because it's a democracy and we all have a vote, we're getting this thing. But realistically, like, some people's votes in some states weighed out a little bit more than other ones.
No, I get it. But
so it's not.
But there's still on a little level. There has to be. There still has to be a reason. Like, for example, you were a high school English teacher.
Mm-hmm.
You read The Hunger Games.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which, by the way, a lot of schools across America would not have let me do that.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Controversial. But okay, so pick another one. The Jungle. Wasn't that Upton Sinclair?
Mm-hmm.
Was that so? Okay, The Jungle. So, because I read that in whatever grade, and I didn't like it very much, but whatever. Yeah, okay, so we're reading The Jungle. So a parent comes in and says, I don't think your class should read this book because I read it and I didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you like it? I don't know. I just didn't like it. Is it banned now? Because that's their opinion, even though they have no basis for their opinion other than, I didn't like it. So, nope, we got to take that out because Susie's mom said no. Okay, so let's read another book. Let's read Johnny Got His Gun. Nope, it's about war. Okay. Oh, somebody's grandfather died in the war. Now they don't want to. And okay, well, take that out.
Instead of fake examples, which they were fine examples, but instead of fake examples, can I give you real examples?
Yes.
So the two examples in my experience, and I'll keep these very short. One was we did a spooky story in middle school, and the one because of ghosts and pagans and all that stuff. Essentially, someone came in and said, I would prefer like a religious exemption. I would prefer it if my kid didn't have to do this. Just because
of ghosts?
Well, Halloween, devils, and just that whole aspect of it all. Okay?
Okay.
And so she explained it to me, and I gave her an exemption. I gave her a different assignment. And I know like religion is a completely different aspect of this conversation, which that's a whole other thing to dive into. But the point I'm making is I didn't have to agree with her reason. I just had to understand where she was coming from.
But she didn't ask,
I agreed with her.
But she didn't ask to take the whole book out. Just my kid.
I understand. But so that's one example. That's one example of somebody where just because I didn't agree with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I still understood where they were coming from and that there were other people that weren't going to see eye to eye with me. So I'm not going to belittle her because I'm like, well, that's stupid. Just because I think it's stupid doesn't mean that like it's fair.
And I agree with it.
Okay,
but it was right to her. Hold on, let me talk about the first example.
So now the second example, I didn't get to talk after your first example. So now the second example, when we did the Hunger Games, for anyone who has never seen the Hunger Games, spoiler alert.
Where have you been?
Spoiler alert, a lot of kids die. It's and not die in the sense of like it's medical or like people are killing other people. In the Hunger Games novels, I had parents that would come up and they would kind of be like, hey, like, where are you going with this? What are you trying to do?
To the end.
And they'd be like, where are you on this? What are you trying to do? And I would try to explain to them, like, there's all these different lessons that you can learn from it. And we're going to do this. We're going to talk about that. And here's how, like, I had to have it all mapped out. And these parents would express to me their concerns, most of which I disagreed with. However, they would express them to me. If they wanted to go to the school board and would have said, we don't want this taught, I have very little doubt they would have won. They probably would have won if it wasn't for me like persuading them, kind of being like, here's what I think we're doing. It doesn't mean that I'm right just because I got to teach it.
Can I speak now?
Go ahead.
Okay. So to point number one, I don't even remember. What was your point number one? Oh, my point number one is the lady didn't come in and say, no one can do it. What was the one about the Halloween? And I do get that.
Yes.
When we had kids in high school in advanced biology, we dissected a cat my senior year.
Yeah.
There were kids that would not dissect a cat.
Yes.
Okay, I get it. But they didn't come in and say, no one should dissect cats because that's what the school is doing.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a personal preference and you have an issue, and I totally respect that, but don't tell everyone else that your personal preference should dictate what everyone else does.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. The second thing is it goes back to content. Because Hunger Games was about kids murdering other kids.
Correct.
Rainbow Land is about just because we're all different colors, we should all get along. I can understand why the content of Hunger Games was bothersome. I don't understand why the content of Rainbow Land is bothersome. Mm-hmm. When Hunger Games first came out, wasn't Hunger Games out for a couple years before it took off?
That I don't know. You mean the books?
The book.
I don't know.
That's what I'd heard that, whether it's true or not. I think my ex told me that it had been bounced around before then it caught fire and became what was it? That was a bad pun, Catching Fire. But I remember right away that I was like, my middle school kids are reading this? And they're like, well, it's a young adult book. And I was like, how can this be a young adult book? And I remember but my kids poured through them and all that stuff and whatever. Mm-hmm. So I'm with you on the quote unquote questionable content for the age group, but all of America read the questionable content of the age group. And but it was questionable content. It was murder, kids murdering other kids, kids basically being sent off to murder them because, you know, unlike war, when we send our people to war, we know there's going to be casualties, but we hope that there aren't. In this, they knew there were going to be casualties as part of the game.
Society found a way to be okay with it. Why do you think that was?
I think part of it because it was so fictional in like a world that didn't exist. It wasn't set in like, you know, North Carolina. Right. It was set in wherever. And just the science fiction of it, of the manipulation, that I think it was so fictional that they knew it was fiction. It was almost Star Wars-ish to a degree. And that was probably the biggest part, I think. But, you know, also because kids liked it. Like, people died in Harry Potter. There was darkness in Harry Potter. Kids read it all over the world.
I don't know if it's because, let's be honest, the real issue here is the title of the song. It's probably not the song. Because for example, Old Town Road was sung by, like, that artist is not a straight white male. I mean, there were millions of little kids singing Old Town Road in schools all across America.
Who is the artist?
What's that? Lil Nas X.
And then Billy Ray came in and joined.
He did like a remix or
correct,
to it,
but
I mean, it was Lil Nas X's song.
I knew that, and then all right.
If Lil Nas X's song would have been Rainbow Road, there are different conservatives across the country that would have said, like, kids can't be singing this.
And he would have gotten sued by Mario Kart.
So, I mean, it's, to me, like.
No, I agree with that. The word rainbow in the title makes it.
So, like, obviously I played a ton of devil's advocate today. I just think.
You did well, by the way.
I just think a lot of people come in, and I think there's this idea of, like, you're really concerned about the messaging, and God bless you. And I wish more people were worried about the messaging. I can't express to you how many people probably never heard the song. Like, I admitted to you before, I was like, I've never heard this song before.
It's catchy.
I can't tell you how many people saw the title of the song, formed their opinion, rallied around it because it worked for their cause, and they decided that they were not going to try to let this fly. And so I just don't think it's like, I think there's 50% of people who are hiding behind it because it helps their cause. And there's another 50% of people because it's just like, they just don't understand it. They don't understand LGBTQ. They don't understand, like, that aspect of it. Very similar to, like, 50s, 60s, right? Like, they just don't understand the other side of the argument. I'm trying to think of, like, a cute way to wrap this up, but I don't really have one. I think they should have been allowed to play the song. I just wish more people, I think not a lot of people understand that this happens every day. This is more a news story because it was Dolly Parton and Miley Cyrus than because of the actual issue that is at hand.
I think my whole point too is, like, people are allowed to disagree and people are allowed to complain and people are allowed to say you shouldn't do that, but then they need to give a reason. And, you know, for the people with Halloween, and they're like, I don't want my kid involved in this because of religious reasons. Okay. And whether you agree with the religious reason or not,
right,
there's a reason. And there's a reason that's valuable to them. And with this song, there is a reason, because the people are afraid of inclusion. And the people are, like, deep down, what they're really afraid of is, God forbid, my first grader turns out to be something other than what I want. And that's the fear. But that's not what the song is just about, like, we're all different, and that's what makes the world great, because if we're all the same, that would suck.
Right.
And I don't understand. And there's people that, like, I just have the guts to come out and say it. I don't like the song because I'm a bigot.
Well, they can't. And that's the beauty of the song for them, is it allows them to hide behind it. That's the
correct.
That's, I mean, correct. For them, that is the beauty.
And at the end of the day, that's all it's saying. And the school board is afraid of these people.
Yeah.
So they didn't come out and say, the school board should have come out and say, no, this is what the message is, and we support the message.
See, it's so it's so funny to me though, because I think sometimes with government and different local authorities, I think we have this idea that like they clearly think what I think. Like they clearly have my moralities. And all I'm saying is like a school board in California has a very different mindset than a school board in Wisconsin. Like it just does. And so this idea of like they should have put their foot down. Do you know what would happen if every school board across America like put their foot down? Like you have drastic results on each end of the red and blue spectrum. You would be shocked if school boards put their foot down. So when you say like, I wish the school board would have put their foot down, you don't know that this school board has the same values that we do in Central Pennsylvania or in Northern California or South Texas. Like we don't know exactly, like we think of them as a school board. School boards are way more right-left today than they've ever been. That's why I said it's the school board has become like the new battle.
But are they allowed? And now we've been on for so long, nobody's listening anymore. Are they allowed to have say I don't know how should I word this, because you said that their school boards in Wisconsin and California are very different, but they're and to degrees I understand that they are, but there's also degrees that they shouldn't be. And should there be public schools that are like, nope, all white kids?
Well, ask that question one more time.
Should there be allowed to be public schools that say, nope, nothing but white kids?
Well, no, but mostly because I don't think ethnicity should be used as a stick.
Great. So, and that was an obvious answer.
So real quick.
So just because someone believes that doesn't mean they should be they should be allowed to do it.
Correct. But that's what's weird. Like, that's the weird part about America, though, is like we have decided that certain things get to be like the stick and other things don't. Because I've made the argument to you several times. I think religious exemptions most of the time are incredibly unfair. There are very few religious exemptions. And so like, and I know like there are a lot of,
and that's a broad topic on its own.
I know there's a lot of religious institutions that have lessened up on like who's allowed into the school and things like, I get that. But I mean, there are a lot of places within American society where how you decide, I mean, there's minority scholarships all over the place. And I understand why they were put in place. Like, I get it. But I mean,
listen, there's lots of Catholic schools.
Can I tell the Stanford thing real quick?
Yes, but hold on.
Along with it
there's lots of Catholic schools that the only way you can get into school is if you're Catholic or if you can really, really play basketball.
Totally. No, I agree. The Stanford thing, for anyone who hasn't seen it, the Stanford thing is really interesting. And I think there's a lot of factors to it. So I'm not sitting here crying like that there's only one reason for this. There's lots of them. If you go and look at the incoming class for Stanford Medical School, okay, 92% are women.
Mm-hmm. This is a whole different topic for another day.
It isn't though, because it's still could be
a long
92% of the if we come back or not. So 92% female. There was 0% white males. Last I looked, white males make up just under 40% of the country, and we made up 0% of the accepted medical students to Stanford, which I would like to think is like the one you would want to aspire to.
It's
go
high.
to.
It should be high on the list. It's Harvard, there's Stanford.
So I just think there's a lot of aspects in society now where when you say like, do you think there should be a school just for? Absolutely not. I don't think there should be a school for just white kids. I'm also to the point now where like, I don't know if we should have scholarships for just minorities. Like, I don't know if we should have dating apps just for this.
Okay, I get what that's.
I'm just saying when you ask me that question, like if I answer like, of course not, it doesn't really give the full scope of what I think, because I feel that way about all races.
But my point was, there shouldn't be a school. There shouldn't be a public school just for white kids. But there are people out there that believe it. Sure. And we can't sit there and say, well, they believe it, so we'll respect their opinion. No, because there are some opinions that are just wrong.
I agree with that. I don't know if Rainbow Land that's the point when I kept saying like the hill to die on. that's like, I think there are people like you and I that would be like, listen, they're going to play the song. It's not a big deal.
It's not a big
deal. What I'm saying, though, is like there's a faction of America that would kind of go like, yeah, it's not a big deal, so we're just not even going to deal with it. Just take it out of the play.
But I think the message of inclusion to young America is a big deal because, you know, America's just getting more diverse. It's not going the other way. And I think that in schools now, kids are already way more accepting. As I've talked to my kids about when I was in high school, not longer than you, but you know, I'm 51. When I was in high school, there were no openly gay kids walking around. Now there are openly gay kids walking around. Now, does it mean that I didn't go to school with gay kids? Of course I did. But it's a different time. And the kids, this generation is way more accepting. And it doesn't, because they're used to it. They don't care. And so I think it is our job as society. I think I think it will make society better if we just continue to go with this momentum. But like, it just seems like these people that don't want to sing this song, I think the message is very important. And if you're taking it out of the school, there's one thing to say it doesn't belong in the school, or there's another thing to say, I agree. I think the opposite of that message. And I think that's what's happening here. I think the opposite of the message of inclusion, or they wouldn't really fight over it.
I still think it's only a story because it's Dolly Parton and Miley Cyrus. Like, I can't get past that point.
There's a little bit to that. There's probably people that think Dolly Parton is the most wholesome person in America because she seems to be like the most wholesome celebrity. She's been married to the same guy for 70 years. She's given all buku money away. And then they think Miley Cyrus is this harlot who, you know, should burn. And so there's probably people that are pissed. Like, Dolly, how dare you sing a song with Miley Cyrus? There's probably a degree of that.
It's hard to be mad at Dolly Parton.
I bet there are.
I don't think these people are even mad at Dolly Parton, though. I think they saw the word rainbow. It was in the title of the song, and that became something to get behind.
Because they're recruiting their kids to be gay.
I'm not here to tell you what they think.
Even though Dolly Parton, who's singing the song, has been married to the same guy for 800 years.
You and I can wink behind the scenes of obviously what we think is happening. But
oh, well, no one's listening anymore. I realize that.
Yeah, you took way too long today.
I know. I'm sorry. Here we got breaking news. Wait, close Wednesday. Wait, what is today?
Today's Tuesday. All right, I'm going to sign off unless you got something. Thank you guys for watching.
No, yeah, you can sign off. Sorry, I got nothing new.
Be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news. Anybody who commented today, thank you so much. Sorry that we didn't get to them. We really, really appreciate it. And we can't express to you enough. I like having conversations with you. I know sometimes it probably seems like we're actually fighting or mad at each other. I enjoy having
when we sign off,
deeper conversations.
We go sumo ring right over here.
In the inflatables.
Did you? I've never done that. Have you done it?
I've done it once.
Have you watched sumo wrestling?
Where like they real sumo wrestling?
Yeah, like on TV where they just try to push each other out of the ring. There is a manliness to the simplicity of you're out of the ring, you lose. You're in the ring, you win. There's no judges. There's a referee. Yeah. But like, that's all there is to it. Yeah. Just you and him and throw him out of the circle. There's something.
And you can't fall, right?
That I don't know.
Yeah, I think I
haven't watched. I remember, like, as a kid, it used to be on Wide World of Sports. You don't even remember Wide World of Sports, do you?
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Was it around
ABC.
when you were a kid? Okay.
Yeah, ABC Wide World of Sports.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can't fall, which adds a whole other aspect to it as well. All right.
Oh, well. All right.
That was a good Tuesday edition. Did you get everything out you wanted?
I did.
You were like gun-ho today.
I'm ready.
You were like,
I'm ready.
we are doing this today.
I'm still mad at Texas, man. They had that lead. They had that lead, and they coughed it up, and they stopped running offense, and I'm mad at Texas.
Thank you guys for watching Midday Show. Be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news. I'm Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. We will see you guys soon.